Hey everybody, the Super Vader 400 here, Douglas Blair Roberts here to you Facebook users. It's time for another review, and as you can see by the title above and the length of this video, this is my long Marvel Cinematic Universe video. This is my long awaited and long overdue video. I initially wanted to do this video before the release of Avengers Infinity War, but I've just been lazy, been trying to do other things, and I just never got around to doing it. So in this video, Avengers Infinity War will be included in this review, and I will also give my thoughts on the upcoming Marvel Cinematic Universe releases. This particular video right here will only focus on the films because that's all I've really watched of a lot of. I haven't watched the very awesome Daredevil and Punisher Netflix series, which I've heard so much about. I haven't watched Luke Cage or Iron Fist, and only watched a little bit of Inhumans. And I haven't watched much of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I'll save those for another video. But right now, this is the movie universe, and like I said, I'll give my thoughts on the upcoming Marvel films. That is Ant-Man and the Wasp. That's the next one coming July of this year. Then next year you have the Untitled Avengers film, and of course the Captain Marvel, movie. There's also Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in 2020, but I won't be talking much about that because there's not much known about that film. So, with that being said, let's get started. Yes, as you can see, I've said this in dozens of videos, but for those of you who are not familiar with my videos, this is my brand new style. I have a problem with using my webcam during the day. I can't sync the webcam with my body, lips, and mouth during sunlight, which is why, for those of you who are familiar with my videos, you mostly see videos at night. I also do not like the way my skin looks in bright daylight on a webcam. So that's another reason you don't see a lot of videos during the night. But I quickly want to get this video out as fast as I can, and only the first part, which is this part right now, was going to be webcam. The rest will be narration based with pictures of what I'm talking about. But yeah, so yeah, and of course so yeah, the first half of this video will be webcam, and the second will be an audio narration review. So, and before I start, I like all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films except for Black Panther. That is my least and most hated Marvel Cinematic Universe film. I did not enjoy that film, which is why you haven't really seen a review of that movie yet. I may do a rant on that movie in the future, but yeah, I didn't like Black Panther. But I like all the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, with the best, in my opinion, being the Avengers films, all three, Ant-Man, Captain America, Civil War, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man Homecoming, Iron Man 1, and of course the Thor movies. I think all of these are the best in terms of quality when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course Iron Man 1. If I didn't mention Iron Man 1, that's the last one. Iron Man 1. So yeah, those are the best. The first film that came out was in May of 2008, and of course that was Iron Man. And let me tell you, this film, when I saw it in 2008, this film was one of the greatest movies of that year. When I first saw Iron Man in 2008, this was just another superhero film. It was just another generic addition to the Fantastic Four, X-Men, Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk movie series. But then at the end, when I saw Fury talking about setting up a team, and saw how that this film was not just another generic superhero film, but this film was a setup to a future Avengers movie and the first film in a shared universe. But that aside, that 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 aside, this film was awesome. I thought this was the best Iron Man. The second two were inferior to this one. This one, not only was it for the most part spot on with the comics, only changing a couple of details, but I love Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man. I loved the action, the special effects, and the journey becoming Iron Man. And I like how this felt more like a comic book film than the second two did. Yet the second Iron Man film, which felt more like campy 80s action film with Avengers character, then Iron Man 3, which was pretty much a buddy cop campy action flick with Tony Stark controlling the Iron Man suits. But this was the best Iron Man and one of the best in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The next one was the Incredible Hulk. This film was okay. I like how this one was closer to the comics, and I like how this one included Abomination M.L. Blonsky, who his actor and his character was the MVP of this film. But things I didn't like about this film, Edward Norton, I didn't think he played a good Bruce Banner. His Bruce Banner was just more like his Fight Club character, and the Incredible Hulk was grossly underpowered in this film. Go back to the first Hulk movie from 2003. Look at all the stuff he was doing in that film, and look how weak he was. Look how weak he was in this film. However, the one thing that saved this film was the action, man. It was awesome, especially the best scene, which was the final fight between Hulk and M.L. Blonsky, the Abomination. This movie felt more like a video game monster movie than a legit superhero or Marvel Cinematic Universe film. Even the Abomination looked like something from the video game Gears of War. So, yeah, that was the problem with the Incredible Hulk, but it was still good. But it was still okay, just not as good as Iron Man or a lot of the other films that came out that year. Next film, which was May 7th, 2010, and that was Iron Man 2. I already talked about this film, but yeah, this film was pretty good, but it was mostly just a setup to the Thor film and of course the Avengers. Like I said, in the film they focused more on setting up Thor and the Avengers than they did setting up the villain. The villain in this film, who was awesome, I barely remember him. He was portrayed by Mickey Rourke. I think he was Banco Crimson Dynamo. I barely remember him because they focused more on setting up Avengers and Thor than they did on this film. But this film was still good. It was still a solid sequel to the very first Iron Man. It gave you more action from the first Iron Man movie, and I love the exchanges and the fight scene between Rhodes and Tony Stark. But like I said, this film wasn't quite as memorable as the first one, and it's inferior in comparison to all the future Marvel Cinematic Universe films that would come out after this. And like I said, whereas the first Iron Man film felt like a comic book film, this movie right here felt more like a campy 80s action film. It was pretty much Expendables with Avengers characters. The next film was Thor. Talk about totally exceeding my expectations and blowing me out of water. This right here was an epic sci-fi fantasy film, and was a pretty good, while changing a lot of things for the purpose of this adaptation, was a pretty good adaptation of Thor. I liked how I love the comic book setting of Asgard, which looks straight out of the comics. So did Thor, being in street clothes when he got sent to Earth. And I love all of the large, colorful cast and memorable characters in this film. Even the side characters like Darcy and the scientists were memorable in this movie. The only thing I can't stand about this movie, since everything was filmed in the dark, the fight scenes the fight scenes were hard to follow. They weren't that good because everything was filmed in the dark, with the best fight scene being the fight scene with Thor and the Destroyer, another character from the comic books. But this right here was a good film. I just thought this would just be a stereotypical Transformer style CGI action film, but it was more than that. The action part was kind of underwhelming. It was kind of the worst part. The story and development were the best points of this movie. The next film was Captain America First Avenger. This film did not look good at all, and I gave Chris Evans no chance playing Captain America. Boy, was I wrong when I saw this film. This film, just like Thor, for the most part, was spot on with Captain America. It was way better than the '90s Captain America from 1990, and everything was awesome, with the exception of there wasn't much development on Red Skull in comparison to how he was developed in the comics. And the only other problem I have with this film is what happens afterwards. This film sets up Captain America and his rivalry with the Red Skull, but because Hugo Weaving left the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Red Skull does not appear again until a small role in Infinity War, which I'm going to get to later in this review. Then of course, what I said for part 1 of this video, part 2 will be the conclusion of phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I will focus on phase 2 and 3. With that being said, let's hit my music right now. Hey everybody, Super Vader 400 here, Douglas Blair Roberts here. Time for the second part of my Marvel Cinematic Universe review. This is the audio portion of this review, and this review will focus on the conclusion of phase 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to review all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, starting with Iron Man, all the way up to Marvel's Avengers Infinity War. Then of course I'm going to give my future on the future of the future MCU films, such as Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is the next film I plan to see, and of course the Avengers Infinity War, the Avengers Part 4 film, the Untitled Avengers film that will be released next year. I'll be giving my thoughts on that. With that being said, let's get started right now. Like I said, in the webcam portion of this review, I left off on the Avengers. The Avengers. Let's talk about the Avengers. One of the biggest box office smash hits to ever hit cinemas. You don't know how awesome and groundbreaking it was back in 2012. And see, 2012, in my opinion, really wasn't that good of a year for movies. 2012 and 13 were both weak years for movies. But one of the most awesome things about 2012 was this movie right here. The Avengers, the very first superhero team up movie. And I mean superheroes from different comic books, who were all developed through their own films, with characters like Hawkeye and Black Widow appearing in Iron Man and in Thor based movies, finally came together for one gigantic superhero smackdown. And boy, was it awesome. Boy, was it awesome. It was just like being back in the 60s comic books where all these characters like Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, and Hawkeye and Widow, and Fury, who all had their own had their own comic books, their own storylines, and were finally, because of Loki, were brought together to form the Avengers. Another thing I loved about this film is that this film not only did it improve on problems from the previous Marvel cinematic universe, but it also was spot on with the comic books, in the 60s. While the lineup in the 60s was a little different, because I think Ant-Man was a part of the first Avengers team lineup. I think he was part of the very first team up. But for the most part, this film, in the comic books, the Avengers came together because of Loki. Loki came to Earth seeking vengeance against Thor and utilized the Incredible Hulk against him. He did that in this film. The only problems I had with this film is where it deviates from the comic books. Was Thanos' involvement, and of course, how underpowered the characters were, especially Loki. Loki was easily defeated by a giant explosive arrow from Hawkeye, and was easily and comically defeated by the Incredible Hulk, which knocked him out long enough for the Avengers to finish off his army and eventually still arrest him. That was the first problem I had. The underpowered characters, and they do this. This is one thing I like and don't like. They underpower the cosmic level characters like Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, to make characters like Hawkeye and Black Widow, which I do like, to make these characters more useful. That's the one thing I don't like, and at the same time do like about Marvel. I do like how they try to involve every character. If this was the comic books, Hawkeye and Black Widow in the battle against Loki would not be needed. They would not be needed, but they always make sure the villains have a large assortment of henchmen to accompany them, because Lord knows they can't fight the main villains. Then the actual main villain is usually underpowered to make so they can fight with each other. But seeing these characters fight and interact with each other. In the beginning, you see Captain America and Iron Man versus Loki right there. Then later you see Iron Man versus Thor, and Thor versus Captain America. Then you see all these guys arguing on the spaceship where you get to see Hulk and Thor. Then finally seeing all these characters. Oh yeah, and of course Hawkeye and Black Widow, which is another thing I liked about this film. They even remembered that the character of Hawkeye was a bad guy. Except the circumstances of him being evil were different here. In the comic books, he was tricked by some swordsman. He was tricked and manipulated by some swordsman, and he first appeared in an Iron Man story. Well, they couldn't fit him in the Iron Man movie, so here it was different. They had Loki control him using the Tesseract. But I like how you remember Hawkeye was previously a villain before he became a hero. Then of course, seeing all of these characters come together in one gigantic battle, in the Battle of New York. What an awesome film! One of the greatest comic book movies ever made. The Avengers, man. The Avengers, and in each film they make, it gets bigger, gets bigger and badder than ever. Each Avengers movie, each Avengers film, they always top themselves and outdo themselves every time they bring these characters together for one superhero smackdown. One of the greatest films of all time, man. Yeah, love the age of the MCU, man. So yeah, that was the Avengers, and the next film was Iron Man 3. This was one of the weaker entries into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I enjoy the film much better now than when I saw it back in 2013. 2013 was another weak year for movies. Movies other than Thor: Dark World, which I'm about to talk about, GI Joe Retaliation, and Pacific Rim. There was really nothing good in 2013. So that was another weak year for movies. But Iron Man 3 was okay. The problem I had with this film is that I wanted a supernatural science sci-fi fantasy action film with Tony Stark, Iron Man, in the fighting in the new badass yellow and red Iron Man suit. You see in the poster right here in a awesome battle with the Mandarin, who Mandarin is vastly different from the other villains in the Iron Man Rogue Gallery. Most villains in the Iron Man Rogue Gallery, with the exception of Crimson Dynamo, the Living Laser, and of course the Living Laser, most of the villains are rival businessmen in suits. Stain, the Ironmonger, and I keep forgetting his name. There's a Vince Menez assassin who wears the titanium armor, Titanium Man. But apart from those three villains I just named, most of the villains are just a bad guy in a suit, a rival businessman in a suit. This was the first supernatural villain. Well, he's not really supernatural, but he has the ring, which has supernatural powers. And this film infamously had Ben Kingsley as an actor posing for the real Mandarin in the film, which angered a lot of people. I remember at the time being angry and laughing. It was hilarious, but it also angered the hell out of me. They would put a joke. They would do something like that in the movie. Now I'm more better received to it, especially hearing that both of these Mandarins were fakes and that the real Mandarin is still out there somewhere. Because to tell you the truth, I didn't like either Mandarin. I didn't like Ben Kingsley, who looked like a cosplayer in a set piece from the Lord of the Rings movies. Then of course I didn't like the the guy at the end who reminded me of Pierce. I think that was his name. Who reminded me of Lex Luthor from the DC universe. Actually, if they had ever did this was one of the guys I would cast as Lex Luthor if they actually ever did. If they had before the DCU came out, this is one of the guys I would have gotten to play Lex Luthor. But yeah, but this was still an okay film. There were several good scenes, and it's more about Iron Man, Tony Stark, than it is about the suit. There were several good moments with Tony Stark and Rhodey. So yeah, Iron Man 3, and the film was downright hilarious, man. But yeah, one of the weaker entries into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even though I enjoy it more now. The next film is Thor: Dark World. Awesome movie. The only problem I have with this film is the screenplay, the storyline, and the villain was. While I love his actor, who previously portrayed a villain in GI Joe: Rise of Cobra. What was his name again? Oh yeah, Christopher Elliston. Yeah, he was Destro. He was Destro in GI Joe: Rise of Cobra. Yeah, he was while giving a good performance, he was a very bland villain, and this film was mostly about seeing Thor, his brothers, and the Warriors 3 team up in an awesome battle. The first problem I had was like I said, I felt the screenplay in comparison to the first one was weak. but I like the action better here than I did in the very first Thor. In the very first Thor, because this film was for the most part mostly in daylight. It wasn't like shot at night like the other was, where I could barely tell what was going on. So I like this. This was a I like how this was a much. This was more of a fantasy action film than it was a this was more of a fantasy action film than it was a drama like the very first one um, was. But here there was way too much comedy. There was way too much comedy, which kind of made the film look bad. This is supposed to be an epic fantasy film. And you have all this unnecessary comedy. I also hate how easy it was to find Asgard. It was in some well that no apparently that had been there all that time, but no one knew that takes them to Asgard, and other stuff about this film. Oh yes, they had Chris Evans, Captain America, make a cameo when Loki was posing as Thor's friends and he turned into Captain America. But I wish they would have extended Chris Evans. This would require more money, but I wish they would have extended Chris Evans and the rest of the Avengers contract to appear in this film, because this is something you would call the Avengers 4. This Avengers 4, the Avengers 4. Malekith and his team is something that you would call the Avengers 4. So that was the only problems I had with this movie. But a really good film, and one of the better entries in the Marvel Cinematic universe. Now, oh yes, the next film, widely considered one of the best films of all time, and that is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think this film is awesome, but there there are two things keeping this film from being the best film of all time. The first thing was, while I love the story, action, and everything about this film. This film was way bigger and way better than the first Captain America movie, and I love the Winter Soldier storyline, and I was spot on for the most part. This was with the comic books. The only thing I don't like about this film is Falcon's atrocious costume, man. This costume looks like something straight out of G.I. Joe. Doesn't look like, or Agents of Shield. Doesn't look like the character from the comic books. Now, the ultimate version of Falcon does have a look similar to that, but even that look in the comic books is better than this. I like the original Falcon. The original Falcon was a bird man, a pretty much a meta-human, like in the DC universe. Universe. I hated out here. He was just a man with robotic wings. Even Red Wing, who was a bird in the Marvel Cinematic in the comic books, is a tiny machine that he designed himself. So sorry, excuse me. So that was one problem I had with this movie. That was one problem I had with this movie. The second problem I had with this movie right here was oh yes, well, Ant-Man wasn't made yet, but no Hawkeye. Well, of course, Iron Man, because of the panic attacks, wasn't in this movie. We know why Iron Man wasn't in this movie, but no Hawkeye in this film. This seemed like something he would be involved in. So those were the only problems I had with his movie. It prevents this movie from being the best of all time. But another awesome film and another awesome addition into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this film was one of the highest grossing films of 2014 and was one of the best of 2014. Next film on this list is, oh yes, one of the highest grossing films of 2014 and widely considered one of the best films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy. Before I continue with the Guardians of the Galaxy, brief history. Prior to seeing this movie, I had never heard about the Guardians of the Galaxy until after the box office smash hit that was the Avengers. After the Avengers, a first superhero team up movie proved successful, they wanted to do another one. And they were talked about the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. So I looked up the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise and did my research. I loved what I saw and loved what I was reading. Loved what I was reading and couldn't wait to see this in film. Then, in order to give myself a small taste of what to see in the film, I watched the Avengers Assemble and the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoons to give myself a taste of what I will be seeing in the Guardians of the Galaxy film, and loved what I saw there too. So I couldn't wait to see the Guardians of the Galaxy film. And when I saw this movie was nothing short of awesome. And I saw this film in 3D, so it was like I was there. It was like I was there. Guardians of the Galaxy and the 2011 film Green Lantern are two of the best experiences I've ever had at a movie theater, because I watched these movies in theater. Guardians of the Galaxy, the cast, the storyline, and everything was good. Weak points of the film include inaccuracy to the comic books, wasting the bad guys, Ronan and Korath, and the action sequences. While this film had a lot of action sequences, with the exception of the final action sequence, that's the entire battle against Ronan and Nebula. Um, the action sequences really weren't that good. Everyone, with the exception of the Damon Hajime guy, I think that's his name, the black guy who portrayed Korath, the machine-headed guy, and Batista, everyone there sucked at fighting, man. Sucked at fighting. Lee Pace did an okay job too, but everyone there sucked at fighting, and the fights here weren't as good as the other MCU entries or other superhero films. I hate how underskilled the characters were in this film. The characters were in this underpowered. The characters were, especially Drax and Gamora and Ronan, and Korath, who in the comic books, these characters are titans. These characters are titans, and here they were weak, especially Drax. The way he got owned by Ronan, man. The way he got owned by Ronan. So yeah, those were the weak points of this film. See, I like everything about this film except the director. The directors and screenwriters are the only thing I do not like about the MCU. These guys do not read comic books, they do not care about comic books, and they do whatever the hell they please with the source material, and that right there just angers me. The character of Ronan, the Accuser, who in the comic books was for the most part was previously a villain, is slowly becoming a hero. Here, they just turned him into an ordinary villain and randomly inserted him into this storyline when he had nothing to do with the Guardians of the Galaxy until the Annihilus Conquest storyline, which that was somewhere in the 2000s, which he made his first appearance in a Fantastic Four comic. From the 60s all the way to the 2000s, he had his own world, his own life, and his own woodstone. He fought various characters like the Fantastic Four and Avengers. Same with the other guy, Korak. And here they randomly inserted them into the Guardians of the Galaxy storyline. They even had Ronan as the one who killed Drax's family when it was Thanos. And in the end, they even tried to get it back to that. They tried to get it back to that where they said, oh, Ronan was just a puppet, but it was really Thanos who killed my family. No, it was Thanos who killed your family. Ronan had nothing to do with that. So that's the problem I have with this film. I also love the ending, the dance-off to save the world. That was vastly different from various other superhero films. So, awesome film. However, not as awesome as it was when I saw it back in 2014. Now that I'm more familiar with the Guardians of the Galaxy source material, you can see the flaws with this movie. But yeah, that was Guardians of the Galaxy. The next film on this list is the second biggest box office smash hit, and that is Avengers Age of Ultron. Ultron, which this film was bigger and badder than the very first Avengers film, and the people completely outdid themselves. Let me give my brief history on this film. I did not think this movie right here would be good. I didn't. I was actually after seeing Phase 1 and 2 of the Marvel Cinematic. I mean, after seeing Phase 1 in the first half of Phase 2 and seeing the box office smash it, that was the Avengers. I couldn't wait till the next time the Avengers came together for another movie. That was until I saw the screenplay, and it featured Tony Stark building a robot that goes mad and decides he wants to wipe out humanity. I did not want to. I did not want to see no 2-hour flick with the Avengers fighting some robot, fighting some robot. I didn't see how a robot would be a threat to the Avengers. Okay, maybe Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Iron Man, but not the powerhouses like Thor, Hulk, and Loki, who was rumored to have a role in this film, but they cut his movie short. Um, I want to see Thanos in this movie. I want to see Thanos in this movie. I want to see the Avengers fight Thanos, not some robot. But I still was gonna watch the film because I'm pretty sure while the storyline would be good, the action will be good, and the cast will give a great performances as usual. Because the actors, the cast members, are one of the reasons this MCU has worked so well. Despite all of the terrible writing in some of these movies. But let me continue. So, yeah, I saw the film from the opening scene, which has the Avengers, I think, fighting Hydra, all the way to the end. I was hooked. Spader, who portrayed Ultron, gave life to what I saw as a weak, bland villain. I didn't see how a robot would be a threat to the Avengers. But they managed to make a film centered around the Avengers fighting Ultron. Like I said, Ultron was such a great villain, and I loved how they introduced Vision, who was one of the reasons I tuned in to see this movie. Vision was one of the reasons I tuned in to see this movie. I was wondering how they would create him and his origin. That's another thing I love about this film. Just like the first film, this film is spot on with the comic books. A lot of people think this is based on the Age of Ultron storyline. It is not. You would have to make 2 films and get the rights back, get the X-Men rights back from Fox in order to make that film. It's not based on the Age of Ultron comic books. They use that title. It's based on the origins of Ultron and the origins of Vision, which what you saw in the film is what you saw in the comic books. I also like and hate this film for being bold enough to kill off an Avenger. That was kill off Quicksilver. I hated that. But I respect the Avengers for responding to critics and showing that they can be dark, they can be bold. Because a lot of the critics to the MCU criticize them and says, "Oh, they're for babies, they're for kids, they're for children. It's not dark or violent." Well, they just killed off an Avenger right there in Quicksilver. So yeah, but one of the best films of all time. It was bigger, badder than the last one. I also love the development of not only Natasha Banner but also of Hawkeye in this film. They focused a great deal on him in this movie. So yeah, Ultron was such a badass villain. A villain I didn't even want to see was such a badass villain. Also love the Thanos spot at the end. At the end of the movie, where he said, "Fine, I'll do it myself." Yes, why don't you do it yourself? So yeah, that was Age of Ultron. What an awesome movie, man. Next film is what I consider to be one of the other best films of the MCU, and that is Ant-Man. I've heard of Ant-Man prior to this movie, but outside of the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon, I never cared about him. Never really cared that much about him or Wasp. This movie right here made me a huge super Ant-Man film, Ant-Man fan. This film right here had it all: comedy, action, adventure, and drama. And they managed to make a good science fiction plot about ants. Good and complex. While I understand the basic plot of this movie, the inner workings of the suit and the ants and the powers, that stuff right there is confusing. But that stuff right there is confusing. But they managed to make that not only entertaining, but good. And this film was well received. They managed to make a film about ants, a sci-fi film about ants. Good, good. And this film was awesome. I like how this film, in contrast to the other MCU movies, this film was very old school. They also managed to make a villain who was a yellow jacket, who was a guy in a yellow jacket costume. They managed to make him ruthless and intimidating. He was the old school bad guys from the 60s. This whole film felt like a retro 1960s comic book, man. Comic book. It was that awesome. And I love how, like I said, I love how different and unique it was in comparison to all of the other films. And this film was so damn funny. I was laughing harder at this film than I was at the Guardians of the Galaxy film, which is widely considered the most hilarious film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But yeah, that was Ant-Man. Also loved not Hawkeye, but Falcon's new costume. Who he actually debuted this costume in Avengers Age of Ultron, but he had a big role. He had a small but big role here in Ant-Man, where Paul Rudd encountered, where Scott Lang encountered him when he went to Stark's Industries. I love this new costume. That monstrosity from Winter Soldier, that had to go. And I love this badass new black and silver costume. Yeah, that was Ant-Man. That was Ant-Man. The next film on this list is widely considered one of the best Marvel Cinematic Universe films of all time, and the next biggest box office smash hit, Captain America Civil War. And yes, I also consider this to be one of the best, not only one of the best MCU films around, but one of the best superhero films around, because this film focused on social issues. And I love this, the naturalism, the alternative view of superheroes, and like I said, focused on the alternate view of superheroes. There's always people who will love the Avengers, but there will always be those people who hate you for all the property damage and all the accidental deaths you caused. And the Avengers were forced to be held accountable and sign a special document that limits their use, and it's split up into two teams. It's split up into two teams, one led by Captain America, the other one led by Iron Man. This film also featured the debut of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, because Marvel recently got the rights back from Sony, and thank God, because I'll talk about this in another video. But those Amazing Spider-Man films 1 and 2 were straight up garbage. So happy to see Spider-Man here, and a lot of people consider his scene to be the best, and boy, was awesome. When he was fighting Hawkeye and Ant-Man, I was laughing my butt off. It was hilarious, man. Awesome film. So many awesome scenes. You got the opening scene in Sokovia. Then, of course, you got the iconic airport fight scene. Then the reveal that the Winter Soldier, Bucky, killed Howard Stark, Tony Stark's father, and the epic battle between Iron Man and Captain America, man. Captain America, what an awesome film, man. What an awesome film. Even Ant-Man's Giant Man made an appearance here. One of the best comic movies around. And I'm going to give my brief history on this film. I also didn't want to see this film because I wanted to see the Avengers fight Thanos. I did not want to see the Avengers fight each other. When I heard they would be adapting the Civil War storyline, I thought that was going to completely suck. And speaking, before I continue with that, Black Panther, who also, T'Challa, who also made his debut in this film, he was better here than he was in his film. Oh yes, I'm going to get to Black Panther in a minute. But he was better here in this film than he was in his own movie. So his debut was good, T'Challa. But continuing before I was left off, I did not want to see Captain America and Iron Man fighting each other in the film. I wanted to see the Avengers fight Thanos. But once again, as soon as I went into the film, from the opening action scene, I also had a problem with this because it felt inconsistent with the end of the Winter Soldier, where Natasha told the government to kiss their butts, because DC said, yeah, the world is a vulnerable place, but us, the Avengers, are all you have to stand between you and total annihilation, man. And that was referenced here, but yeah, this film, one of the best films of all time, yeah. Next film is another film that I widely consider to be the best of the MCU universe, because this film was different from other Marvel Cinematic Universe films, and that was Doctor Strange. Oh yes, I love this movie because this movie was vastly different. This movie was like a hybrid of, this movie was like some Harry Potter slash martial arts anime based movie. That's what this movie was like, where instead of lots of science fiction, lots of plots rooted in science fiction, even the fantasy film of Thor, another fantasy film, had a lot of sci-fi, science fiction elements. This right here was purely fantasism about chi, magic, and mysticism. And was vastly different. It was also darker than previous film, focusing on paralysis, loss of limbs, regaining limbs, and the dark side of immortality and time travel in this movie right here, where the end of the film had Strange and the antagonist Dormammu reliving the same moment over and over, again to get Dormammu, to force Dormammu to leave. And then the cruel ending where Caecilius, the villain, where he got what he wanted, but it wasn't what he wanted. That was eternal life as part of the wand, part of the wand. So and then at the end where mortals, while this film for the most part was spot on with the comic books, they changed a lot of details. And the two details they changed were the Ancient One and the character of Mortals. Mortals was previously a wizard competing with Strange for the Ancient One's services in the comic books. Here in this movie, he was studying under the Ancient One with Strange until it was revealed by Strange that the Ancient One was stealing life force from Dormammu to survive as long as she did, was feeding off the Dark Universe. I think that's what it was called, as long as to stay alive, as long as to maintain her eternal life. Then at the end he stole the energy back from Panghorn, the cured paraplegic, and stole back his power. So yeah, one of the more darker entries in the Marvel cinematic universe. Only problem I had with this film was that the Ancient One in this film was a racial issue. The Ancient One in the film was Asian. Here, they not only made him a woman, but they also had a white person portray her instead of an Asian. That right there was the only thing I didn't like about this movie. But let's continue. Next movie is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This film right here, well, I had lots of problems with this film. One thing I loved about this film was bigger and badder than the original Guardians of the Galaxy. And one thing I like about this film, why I didn't like all the jokes and terrible humor and pop culture references in this film. I love the addition of the new character Mantis, the development of Yondu, the cameo of various actors such as Sylvester Stallone, the guy from the Arby's, Ving Rhames, the guy from the Arby's commercial, and of course the Super Bowl 51 intro, and of course yeah, these were things I liked. And of course, one thing I loved about this movie was the action. They actually had the Guardians of the Galaxy style action. The Guardians of the style action. The epic battle. These first off, you started the film off with an epic battle between the Guardians and a giant squid monster with Baby Groot dancing. That played just out of a Guardians of the Galaxy comic book. I hate how underpowered these characters were in the first movie. Here they were more powerful than the iconic final battle with Quill, the Guardians of the Galaxy versus Ego, his father. And that was one thing I didn't like about this film. I didn't like how they made Ego Quill's father. Quill's father when Ego has nothing to do with the Guardians of the Galaxy or any Marvel character in the Marvel universe. Yeah, now they did say that Jason, son of Spartax, would not be Quill's father in this film. But I was hoping for the father reveal to be something bigger than Ego being his father. And then I hate how Ego just all of a sudden out of nowhere, because he's evil, he all of a sudden out of nowhere just reveals that he killed Quill's mother, killed Quill's mother. And this film tried a lot of, some of it worked, some of it didn't. They tried a lot of forced sympathy and forced tears out of everyone. Film treats you like his babies. That's what I don't like about the MCU. Love the actors and the producers, Kevin Feige and Josh Whedon. They're the ones who made these movies great. But then there are directors like James Gunn, who I can't stand, putting in all these pop songs and pop culture references to distract from the story and the BS, the inaccuracies with the comic books, and often just trying to elicit sympathy and tears from the audiences. That's the one problem I had with this film. However, I enjoy the film much better now than I saw it back in 2017. Other thing that hampered my enjoyment of this film back in 2017 was I saw a horrible leaked version of this movie, because the guy I wanted to see this film with, yeah, he was busy, and I just didn't want to see it with my dad. Like I said, have a very strange relationship with both of my parents right now. But yeah, but a good film, man. Way better now on DVD and Blu-ray than it was when it was in theaters. Yeah, and yeah. Yeah, the next film on this list is Spider-Man Homecoming. Yeah, I wanted to see this film in theaters, but I had problems. I had personal problems to deal with, and I just didn't want to hang out with anyone. So I streamed this film too, and boy did I regret it, because this film right here was awesome. And just like Doctor Strange, Civil War, and the Avengers movies, one of the best entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And not only one of the best entries of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in my opinion, one of the best adaptation of Spider-Man on the big screen, and one of the best versions of Spider-Man period. I think this is even superior to a lot of the Spider-Man comic books. This film is loosely based on the Ultimate version of Spider-Man. According to the Ultimate version of Spider-Man, Liz Allen is African American. Peter's best friend and assistant is based on a character from the Ultimate version, and Aunt May is surprisingly younger in the Ultimate version than she was in the original Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man series, and was completely new because the character of Flash Thompson, who I had a huge problem with going into this film. This guy does not look like a tough guy or a bully. Why can't they not get Flash Thompson right? Why can't they get a guy, put him in a Letterman's jacket, get a big strong guy, put him in a Letterman's jacket, have him be all mean, aggressive, and psychotic towards Peter? That's too hard to make. That's too hard to make. But this guy was a brand new villain, and see, I can relate to this film, a brand new type of bully. I can relate to this film now because the previous bully I just described, these are the bullies I had when I was younger. But as I'm getting older now, most of my bullies are smug, rich, or extremely successful people and other nerds who are just more successful, financially successful than I am. So I could definitely relate to this movie more so than the previous Spider-Man films. I love how they invented a new type of bully, something I had a huge problem with going into this film, and I love the idea of two shockers in this movie, and Michael Keaton, Batman, Bruce Wayne as Vulture in this film, and I love how realistic Vulture was. He was just trying to do. He was a guy who had got unfairly let go from his job and was trying to do what he could to provide for his family. I love the love triangle between Liz Allen and Peter Parker. You have Peter who want to be with her, but he can't because of his superhero life, his superhero commitments, and I also like how and then you have Liz Allen who likes Peter and constantly wants to do stuff with him, but Peter has to keep unfairly rejecting and ditching out her. I was completely into this romance and love story. The end where she had to move was sad. Was actually sad. I wasn't crying, but I wanted to. It was sad, man. Bravo to the cast of this movie. One of the greatest films of all time, man. One of the greatest films, way better than those previous Amazing Spider-Man film Crapfest, man. Crapfest, which I wasn't into anything in those movies. They love how Peter Parker, unlike in the previous film, actually went on a real journey. He actually had to prove he was worthy of Spider-Man. He was worthy of this suit. And much to my surprise, Tony Stark and Iron Man, Tony Stark wasn't involved much in this film as I thought he would be. So yeah, one of the best MCU films around. And it really showed that Spider-Man, as soon as Sam Raimi was done, Spider-Man should have went back to Marvel. That Amazing Spider-Man film franchise, Crapfest, that should not have happened. Hold on for a moment, I'm going to get some water. Yeah. Now, the next film on this list is Thor Ragnarok, which was okay when I first saw it. I loved the story. Screenplay, action, and the cast. The one thing I didn't like about this movie, well, besides the fact that I also streamed this movie too, the guy I wanted to see it with, we're no longer friends, and once again, I mentioned the problems with my parents. So yeah, I didn't see this film. Either. Actually, I haven't seen any film. And the last film I saw in theaters was The Hitman's Bodyguard. So yeah, I'm gonna tell people that right now. I've streamed every film I've watched from now on ever since that film. That was the last film I saw in theaters. But this right here, Thor Ragnarok, besides the fact that I watched an extremely terrible stream, the first part of the stream wasn't even in English. I hated how this film didn't resemble a comic book movie. Well, at least not until the end of the film. This film looked more like a bland made for TV sci-fi film with Marvel characters in it. That was the only problem I had with this film. when it comes to story and action, it was way better than the previous Thors, and love Thor's new look. This is the best look he had with the short hair, with the short hair in the film was downright hilarious, and I love their inclusion of one of my all-time favorite incarnations of the Hulk, and that is War World Hulk. And love the other characters, the rock skin creature who reminds me of the Thing. What was his name again? I'm on the computer right now. What was his name again? Um, um, hold on, I'm on. What's his name now? Korg. Yeah, that was his name. Korg. Love Korg and love Valkyrie. Valkyrie, the woman from the Rocky movie Creed. Creed, she's in this movie as Valkyrie. She was vastly different from her comic book counterpart, but this was a good reimagining of who Valkyrie is. I wasn't too angered by it. I know a lot of people were, but uh, wasn't. This right here was an awesome film. And one thing I loved about this film was that I don't was they this film finally showed how powerful Thor was. Like I said, I hate how underpowered Thor has been in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. This right here and the next film about one of the next films I'm about to talk about were Thor at his most powerful. I love the electric power up with the Led Zeppelin's Immigration playing in the background. That final finale scene with Thor, Valkyrie, and Loki fighting Hela and her soldiers was straight up badass. Then you had the end with Surtur with Surtur destroying Asgard and Hela in a brutal version. He squashed her out of existence with a giant sword, with a giant sword. Also love how dark this film was. The Thor films with each version got darker and darker. You had Dark World with the mother being killed. Then you had this version with the Warriors 3 and Scourge, the new character portrayed by Carl Urban, one of my favorite actors, all getting killed. All getting killed in this movie. And finally Loki's brother, Thor's brother, his redemption, and love the humorous chemistry between Thor and Loki in this movie. And one of the other reasons I want to see this movie was the plot. At the end of Thor: Dark World, you thought Loki was dead, but the post-credit scene showed that he was still alive in this universe. He was still alive. He was still alive and was posing as Odin. I want to see how that went down, and boy, was that handled real well. And that led to an awesome scene with Strange, who I was wondering what his role in the film would be. Was kind of disappointed that he didn't fight in this film. I was kind of hoping when they said he was going to be in this film that he was actually going to fight, because the Thor movies are the closest to Doctor Strange's films, because the Thor movies are, Doctor Strange is purely fantasy, whereas Thor is sci-fi fantasy. But his cameo in this film was good too. But I was hoping it would lead to him participating, going to Asgard and participating in the final battle. I also love the post-credit scenes. That's the second one with the Grandmaster, the guy portraying him, I keep forgetting his name, but he did a great job in this movie because I hated him. I so wanted those warriors at the end of the film to straight up kill him, but they didn't. But the that cut scene was good, but the one before that where Loki is questioning Thor about going back to Earth, does he think it's a good idea to bring him back to Earth? And then Thor said, "What can go wrong?" And out of nowhere, it's Thanos' ship, which I missed during the initial airing, during my first viewing of this film. But this is going to lead to something real big in a minute, which I'm about to talk about in a minute now. Yeah, so that was Thor Ragnarok. And once again, another reason I really wasn't looking forward to this film was just filler to the film I wanted to see. I want to see. Now it's time for ah, it's time for one of it's time for the fourth biggest box office smash, the fourth biggest box office smash, and widely considered one of the best Marvel MCU films. Not only one of the best MCU films around, one of the best films, period. And that was the biggest overhyped movie, Black Panther. And as you saw, yes, I said overhyped because I did not like this movie. I did not like this movie. The movie wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. The trailers for this film looked terrible. The trailers for this film looked terrible, and I heard a lot of bad reviews. A lot of bad reviews from people who didn't like this film, and yeah, that ruined my enjoyment of the film. And once again, this is one film I didn't really plan on seeing. And then once again, the guy I wanted to see it with, the people I wanted to see it with, they had already saw it before me, and I'm no longer friends with the guy I want to see it with. So, yeah, and this film right here, this is the worst entry, the weakest and worst entry in the MCU. Not the worst comic book movie of all time, but one of the weakest and worst entries in the MCU. Here's the biggest problem I have with the Black Panther. While they, for the most part, follow the Black Panther comic books, they changed a lot of stuff from the comic books. The biggest problem I had with this film was this film felt more like a bland sci-fi hood movie with African American characters. It was pretty much Thor with African American characters. This film was a cross between Thor, Thor, Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood, and the movie Juice. Juice. If I wanted to watch those movies, I would see those. I did not want a hood movie or a SJW film, which there was lots of SJW propaganda in this movie right here. I want to see a comic book film. I want to see what Stan Lee and Ditko created in the 1960s. Which brings me to my next point. I hate how everything was grounded in reality, including the second reason for tuning into this film was the villain, Claus. Now, I first saw him in a Fantastic Four cartoon, and he's both an antagonist of the Fantastic Four and Black Panther, who Black Panther he has a bigger connection to. I hated how he was utilized and killed off in this film, and I hate the way he looked in this film. With the Claus character wears a skin tight bodysuit with an African hula skirt with the claw gun. I was hoping they would make a modernized version of that costume in this movie right here. No, they didn't. It was just the what was his name again? The cast. It was it was Andy Serkis. It was Andy Serkis with a giant claw gun, with a giant sound gun on his head, on his head. They didn't at all try to adapt him out of the recreate his comic book appearance. That turned me off to the film. And the highlights of the film were the Wakandan women. They were the best part of the film. Their fight scenes and stuff were better than T'Challa. Their acting scenes were better than him. Broick, he was awesome in Civil War. He was terrible here. He was boring, terrible, and weak in his own films. The females had better fights than he was. The villain Killmonger, who was overrated, was better than he was. And by Killmonger, he was a good villain, but we've seen him before. Everyone talks like he was this groundbreaking villain, and he was not. Yeah, that was Black Panther. Yeah, you didn't see, for those of you who were friends of mine on Facebook, you didn't see a review of this movie because I didn't enjoy it. I didn't want to ruin the parade and piss off anyone, so I kept my opinions to myself. But as you can see right here, yes, I did not enjoy or like this film, and widely considered to be one of the worst films, and I consider it to be one of the worst films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, for the fifth biggest box office smash hit and the biggest box office movie, action movie, sci-fi action movie spectacle, Avengers Infinity War. One of the greatest films ever, and one of the biggest films I was looking forward to up until up until I saw up until I read some of the negative reviews for this film, watched various negative reviews on YouTube, and read the screenplay on Wikipedia, and I decided to skip this movie and stream it. And once again, I mentioned not getting along with my parents and having no one to see the film with. The person I wanted to see the film with, she already beat me to it. But I didn't like the stuff I was hearing about this film. I did not like the screenplay. I did not like the screenplay. The actors, the action, and the that kept me interested in this film from the opening scene, which showed Thanos on Asgard, where we left off at Thor Ragnarok on the ship, beating up everyone. I'll talk about a dark, gruesome way to start the film with all of the Asgard soldiers massacred. Then Thanos easily defeats the Hulk and kills Loki. And the characters and actors, they pretty much kept me into this movie. Like I said in my longer version of the Infinity War, when it comes to stuff like professional wrestling and movies, you gotta have you gotta have not only good actors but people who can keep you invested, and who are good storytellers, who can keep you invested and interested in this universe, despite how terrible the plot was. The actors and the action and the adventure and comedy straight up carried this movie right here. Yes, while this film right here was the biggest action adventure sci-fi spectacle to ever hit big screens, this was bigger than every film ever. It was bigger than Star Wars, bigger than the DCEU, which is much bigger than Marvel, bigger than GI Joe, bigger than Transformers, which is usually the back daddies of action adventure films. This right here was bigger than all of those movies when it came to action. However, when it came to screenplay, it's one of the worst and weakest films of all time. The screenplay was the very worst. Thanos. Thanos is the best and worst character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. His reveal at the end of Avengers was the worst part of that movie because Thanos, while I loved his motivation and plan in this film, the problem I've always had with Thanos since his introduction in Avengers, and of course Guardians of the Galaxy, his full introduction in Guardians of the Galaxy, I hate how Thanos waited until Earth was fully populated with superheroes to carry out his master plan. Whereas it not been for the stupidity of 4 to 6 characters, that's Quill, Gamora, Drax, and of course Nebula, and Loki. The Avengers, they would have won. They would have stopped and defeated Thanos if all of the Avengers would have fought together. Why did he wait till why did he wait till the universe, not just Earth, but the universe was fully populated with heroes capable of stopping him to carry out this grand master plan. And the screenplay was one of the reasons I didn't see this movie in theaters, but I wish I saw it in theaters because this film was awesome. Captain America, all of the fight scenes, the interaction, the humorous interaction between all of the characters, and Captain America and Thor's "Bring me Thanos" scene was awesome. I also love Captain America's brand new appearance, Nomad, from the comic books without the mask and stuff. Yeah, hearing that Captain America wouldn't be Captain America in this film. Also, Chris Evans would not be Captain America in this film. Also turned me off this film. But this new persona, Nomad, was even better. And this is what I want to see. All of the Avengers in a superhero smackdown against against Thanos. And like I said, this film was awesome. I've already seen the film about 11 times already. One of the best. What, like I said, the big, while story wide, while the storyline was weak, the biggest box office spectacle to ever hit cinemas, man. Ever hit cinemas, man. One of the biggest, baddest films ever. And I can't wait to the future of the MCU. So yes, this concludes the MCU review. Now for my thoughts on the future films. Of course, you have the next film, Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I saw a trailer for this film, and this film looks awesome. I love the first one, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love this one. I'm gonna contact my dad next to see this film. Hopefully next week. Hopefully next week or the week after. Then of course, oh yes, the 2019 film Captain Marvel, which I'm looking forward to. This will be set in the 90s and will feature Lee Pace and Digimon Hajime reprising their roles as Ronan and Korra, especially in this 90s Marvel film. And this film will set up Captain Marvel, her appearance in the Untitled 2019 Avengers movie, which I already can't wait for. And after seeing this film, after seeing this film, it will be Captain Marvel and the original Avengers against Thanos um in a superhero battle. I wonder how they're gonna bring everyone back and how they're gonna defeat Thanos, man. I already can't wait to part four. So yes, and of course you got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Spider-Man Homecoming, which I'm looking forward to those. However, I don't care that much about those because I'm more interested in Marvel and Avengers right now. But if those are good, I'll see those films too because the second Guardians of the Galaxy film was pretty good, and I love Spider-Man Homecoming. But yeah, and let's talk more about Avengers Infinity War, the depths. Let's talk about some of the stuff I didn't talk about in my longer Avengers Infinity Wars review. All of the deaths in this film, I kind of predicted. All of the deaths in this film, I kind of predicted. Some were unpredictable. Loki, Visions, and Drax's and Gamora's deaths, for the most part, were predictable. And T'Challa's Black Panther's deaths. Their deaths were predictable. The deaths I did not see coming were Falcons, Mantis, Quills, Quills, Doctor Strange, and Fury and Agent Hill. Their deaths I did not see. I did not see coming. I did not see coming. I did not see coming in this film. I did not see coming in this film. I did not see those deaths coming, and bravo to that because I did not see those deaths coming. Um, let's talk about the deaths I had a problem with. I hated how weak Vision was in this movie right here. Knew Vision was gonna die. I kept this to myself, but when I saw Age of Ultron and I saw the Infinity Gem in his head, I knew, okay, when Infinity War comes, Thanos is gonna rip that gem straight out of his head, killing him in the process. He's gonna die in Infinity War. Then the next character, Loki, I knew he was gonna die because he failed to retrieve the Tesseract in the 2012 film. But I hated the way he died. He died in such a hilariously comical way. First, he tries to trick Thanos with the Hulk. That fails. And instead of laying low and waiting until Thanos leaves, or just finding a better way to attack Thanos, no. He tries to stab Thanos. He first tries to form another alliance with him, even though the first time failed. He tries to trick him again, and Thanos uses the gauntlet to block his sword and just chokes him, squeezes and snaps his neck, chokes him to death, and he dies. It was sad, but Just hilarious. Hilarious, and no, you knew these characters were gonna die, but come on, make it tougher than that. Make it tougher than that. Gamora's death. Knew she was gonna die. Knew she was gonna die, but I expected a much more climactic death than her being thrown off a cliff. Then thrown off of a cliff. And Drax, I knew he was gonna die. He couldn't even beat Ronan in the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. You know he was gonna die here, and he jeopardized the plan. So yeah, yeah. Now, and one thing I also liked about, like I said, one thing I liked about this film was that I never have to worry about any film of mine, any script I turn into Hollywood, ever being stupid, because you can make a film where people die, but in the next one, time will be reversed, and they will somehow come back to life. They will somehow return to life. That's pretty much what they're gonna do in the next Avengers Infinity War film. Because one interesting thing about this film, everyone who's died is still signed up for sequels and are expecting to reprise their role in the Avengers film next year. So yeah, lots of exciting movies in the future. Can't wait to the conclusion of Phase 3, and I mean to the conclusion of Phase 3 and the beginning of the conclusion of Phase 3 and the beginning of Phase 4. So yeah, this was my review of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe and my thoughts on the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All right, I'm done for now. Like I said, this is also a short overview of all the films we're going to talk about individually, longer, more in-depth reviews of each film. All right, right now I'm done. All right, I'll see you guys later.